Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So the trade business overshadowed everything else, but we had a very weak report on the fourth quarter of GDP, real GDP, which ended, fourth quarter ended December 31st. That was the shutdown quarter, the Democrats' shutdown quarter. But it came in at 1.4%. It looks like the shutdown and the reduction in so-called federal employee services took a percentage point, 1%, off of the number. Now, it may be, I don't know whether that estimate is right or not, but that's what I looked at. President Trump said 2%. Perhaps he's right. For the year, GDP was up only 2.2%. So it's disappointing. There's some bright spots in it. The private economy grew at 2.4, which was almost double what the total was. So that's probably your federal shutdown business. But some of the inflation stuff that came in was a little disappointing also. Anyway, let's talk about it. We have two really good people. E.J. Antoni is an economist and senior fellow at Unleash Prosperity and the chief economist at the Heritage Foundation, and my pal Mike Faulkender. Michael Faulkender is a professor of finance at the University of Maryland and America First Policy Institute. He's the co-chair for America Prosperity, and maybe most important, former deputy secretary for economic policy at the U.S. Treasury, and he was one of the drivers of the One Big Beautiful Tax Cut bill. Anyway, gentlemen, welcome. We got a nice leisurely half hour. Mike Faulkender, your thoughts on the weak GDP report and what it may mean?
Yeah, I think you nailed it with the recognition of the government shutdown impact. That was about 1.25 points off of the GDP number. I would say if you just look at the last three quarters, so the ones that are fully Trump's economy, the economy grew at 2.4% over those 9 months, and so if you annualize it, if that were to continue, you're above 3. So you can see the significant shift in economic activity since the president came in. And as you and I have been talking for quite a while, there are enormous tailwinds coming into 2026. It takes time for the deregulatory agenda to fully find its way into the economy, the reduction in energy prices, the tax refunds. Not only are we going to get the One Big Beautiful Bill refunds, but, as you were just talking about with John Carney, we're going to get potentially some tariff refunds. That's going to all be stimulative in the first half of this year. So you're already seeing the results of the president's economic policies. And while the Schumer shutdown did shave off at least a point off of GDP, I think that the underlying economy continues to be strong. Inflation came in lower than anticipated. So, all the seeds have been planted for us to continue to have a strong economy, much like we had in the first term.
EJ, apropos of what Mike Faulkender is saying, I'm looking at the durable goods report for December. Non-defense capital goods ex-aircraft. Okay, so it's business CapEx. The orders and shipments are booming, both orders and shipments, okay? Last 3 months, orders are up 7.5% annually. Shipments, where they actually put it out, 7.8%. Those are huge numbers. And then I go into the industrial production report, right? That's a very underrated report, by the way. I don't know why people, because it's the supply side of the economy. So first of all, production was up 0.7. Manufacturing was up 0.6. Okay. Manufacturing is now 3.5% growth the last 3 months. But most importantly, EJ, business equipment, okay, this is more CapEx, up 0.9%, not almost a full point in January. It was up 0.9 in December. It was up 0.5 in November. The 3-month change is 9.4%, 9.4. And in fact, the 12-month change is 9.3. Now that is a boom. I mean, Faulkender's right. That is such a boom. That could be 5% growth in 2026 from the supply side of the economy.
Larry, you make a really, really great point looking at those reports. And I think that is paralleled or maybe even supported when we look at other data from things like the regional Federal Reserve banks, the surveys that are done there in the 12 different districts, looking at both the manufacturing and the services side. But let's focus on the manufacturing surveys. They're showing a big rebound at the end of last year, start of this year. January really seems to have been some kind of turnaround month for the economy. And there could be different reasons for that. Maybe it's because of provisions from the One Big Beautiful Bill. But regardless of why, the fact is it looks like it's happening. It looks like we are finally seeing the layoffs in manufacturing stop. By the way, those layoffs did not start last April. They started at the beginning of 2023. So it's a 3-year-long trend that seems to have finally stopped and is hopefully reversing. We are seeing the big increase in new orders. We're seeing the increase in shipments. We're seeing the increase in production. So all around, these seem to be very positive reports that we're looking at. And it seems like manufacturing may finally be turning a corner. And again, I really want to emphasize the fact that all of these people, these critics of the president, who look at the manufacturing sector and say it's somehow last April was when everything took a nosedive. No, that's not true. You can look at, again, whether it's employment or whether it's things like production levels, and see that the sector has been in recession basically since the summer of 2022. That's when things really started to turn down.
Well, that's you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. I'm looking, Mike Faulkender, some big numbers. Let me see. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. James Freeman, who's really a good writer, supply side guy for the Wall Street Journal. So he has a piece out yesterday or the day before. Happy refund season. Okay, you know what's coming. So he's saying, let's see. He's quoting Wells Fargo economists Michael Puglisi and Shannon Grein. I don't know them. But here's what they're saying. Tax policy enacted in One Big Beautiful Bill will generate a sizable boost to household tax refunds in the 2026 filing season. Specifically, listen to this. We look for the average refund size to rise to $3,750, up 18% from last year. And then they say an increase of as large as 30% strikes us as plausible, though it is not our base case. We project total refunds to rise by roughly $80 billion. Right? Now, you're a smart guy, and you helped put this bill together. Are they right? Those are all big numbers.
Those numbers sound in line with the analysis that we did at Treasury and that Secretary Bessent has been talking about. Because remember, if you look at no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, because the bill didn't get enacted until July 4th, and then the rulemaking didn't occur until into the fall, there was no time for the IRS to adjust withholding tables. And so if you were receiving overtime pay, you still had taxes withheld from it. All of that money is coming back, not just since the bill was signed, but all the way back to January 1st. And you think about all the middle-class Americans out there who are the recipient of one, maybe more than one of those provisions. They're looking at significant refunds. And, the benefit, I think, to the Republicans and to the president is that when it shows up in somebody's tax refund, they recognize that it's because of a tax change. When they just get a change in their biweekly paycheck, it could be for myriad reasons, right? It could be that they worked a different amount of overtime this last 2 weeks, or that, something else in their hourly wage or the number of hours they work changed. But when it shows up in your tax refund, you pretty much know it's because of a change in the income taxes that you had due. And I think that, unlike in 2017, I think that Republicans would do well to ask their voters, how much larger was your refund this year? Can you actually see it this time, that despite what the media is telling you that the tax cut was for the rich, did you actually see a significant change in your taxes that were owed? How big was your refund? How did you use your refund? Because I think those Wells Fargo numbers are right.
Wow. Well, so in round numbers, $4,000, let's say, $4,000. You're right. That should be a talking point. You're 100% right. Hopefully it will be. The president's starting to, but you're right. The individual House members have got to do that. I have, we're going to broadcast in Washington. I think you're coming on, Zach. We're going to Tuesday and Wednesday, State of the Union. Yeah. And Mike Johnson, Speaker Johnson, is going to be there. And so we'll talk to him about the importance of all this. These are how much is it? $80 billion off a $30 billion economy? How much is that?
It's about 1/3%.
Right. Well, 1/3%.
That's a big number.
1/3%. So that adds, 0.3% to GDP?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a big number. Now, EJ, I got one for you. We have enough time. Let's take a break here. Let's take a break. And then we'll do this other one, because the second one I have is actual tax cuts from the One Big Beautiful Bill. Not just refunds, but tax cuts on top of the refunds. So we are talking about 2026, the new year GDP growth and business CapEx and consumers and tax. We were talking about tax refunds, which were huge, almost $4,000 per family. But actually, there's another one on actual tax cuts from One Big Beautiful Bill. So we're talking to E.J. Antoni, who's economist and senior fellow at Unleash Prosperity. And he's also the chief economist at the Heritage Foundation. Michael Faulkender is a former deputy secretary for economic policy at the U.S. Treasury. Actually, you were just a deputy, not for everything. I don't know why it says economic policy. Anyway, teaching school at the University of Maryland and America First Policy Institute, AFPI, co-chair for American Prosperity. EJ, let me go to you. More from this column by James Freeman. You know James Freeman. Anyway, this is the Wells Fargo crowd. We estimate the total reduction in household income taxes. This is a reduction in taxes in 26 from One Big Beautiful Bill will be roughly $220 billion or 0.7% of GDP. I mean, you take that plus the refunds, which were 2% of GDP. Anyway, you got an extra point from GDP, but this is amazing. $220 billion tax cuts, 0.7% of GDP. Do you buy into that?
I do, Larry, and I think people are really underestimating just how much of this is going to go to investment. Sure, you're going to see a boost from consumer spending. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. But when you're talking about things like 100% bonus depreciation or full expensing for qualified business equipment and the domestic R&D costs being made permanent, something we've never had before, I genuinely believe that a big reason why we've seen investment growth, why we've seen the CapEx growth, is because of this bill. And I think that's going to continue throughout this year, throughout 2026. I mean, again, it's not just a matter of getting consumer spending higher, although that will happen, and that's a good thing. We want people's take-home pay to be larger. We want people to have more money to spend, but we want them also to have more things on which to spend that money. So it's not simply, that Keynesian demand side boost where you just get cost increases. No, we want that supply side growth. And I genuinely believe that the bill is going to help do that. So again, yes, no tax on tips is great. The huge reduction in for seniors, that basically means no tax on Social Security. That's great. The no tax on overtime, that's great too. But I especially like the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime because they also are supply-side incentives. You work more, you work harder, you do a better job, and your customers pay you more, you get more money. That's great.
So here's how I'm going to summarize that. Supply creates its own demand. Who said that? It's a good friend of mine. Jean-Baptiste Say. He said it around 1800, 1801, 1802. I just talked to him. I commune with some of these guys, Milton Friedman and Joseph Schumpeter. I like to spiritual commune. Jean-Baptiste Say. Supply creates its own demand, Mike Faulkender. So actually, one of the brightest spots, to EJ's point, but even in the lousy fourth quarter with all the shutdown, I don't actually believe anything because of the shutdown. But business fixed investment was up 3.7%. That was so it's almost 4%. And when I sat with Trump a couple of weeks ago for an interview, he talked about the 100% depreciation, Michael. He thought, he went right to it. And that was something that Mnuchin and Steve Moore and I pushed in the first term bill. That matters a lot.
Yeah, and remember, in the first term in TCJA, we were only able to get immediate expensing on equipment.
Right.
In this bill, we were able to get it on structures, on factory construction for the next 4 years. And so when you couple that with the president's trade policy, we are simultaneously saying if you import from abroad, it's more expensive, but you could instead manufacture it here, and we're going to provide a less regulatory environment and allow you to immediately expense the construction of the facility that's going to generate that product. So, we're simultaneously addressing both the demand and the supply side in order to re-domesticate a lot of our economy. I also wanted to go back to what you were talking about with EJ on the refunds. Yeah.
Real quick.
I mentioned before the break that we did not adjust the withholding tables in 25, but we did adjust them in 26. So it's not just that the refunds are going to come in 26. It's that then paychecks are also going to be higher because we got the withholding adjustments done. So you're getting a double hit, double benefit from the tax reduction in the first part of 26.
Terrific stuff.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our country has to offer, especially health care. Across every state, every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.